This video is going to be a film study look at Jalyn Armour-Davis and how he played in the Ravens' 3 preseason games in his third year, entering his third season in the NFL. Of course, he's been injury-plagued. I think he played 4 games as a rookie, 7 or 8 games in his second year. I thought during the preseason snaps that we have of him, he looked smooth, athletic, looked like a guy who can match receivers in coverage on deep balls. I suspect that he's also very intelligent in zone and particularly match coverages. And I only, unfortunately, really have one example of that last one there. I intend to show you 10 or 12 plays that I think are representative of how he performed during the preseason. At this point, he would be the fourth outside corner, I should say. The Ravens are, I think, loaded at safety and then the nickel position. They certainly have 2 dedicated nickel defenders in Arthur Maulet and Ardarius Washington. Maulet is obviously injured. As it relates to JAD, he's a guy who I suspect would only play on the outside. There is 2 reps in this film study video where the Ravens go cowboy and put both outside corners, I should say, on the same side. Occasionally that'll happen. Generally you get a man-to-man defense from that. That's why they were doing that pre-snap. But sometimes teams try to be tricky or outsmart the quarterback. And the Ravens were exceptional at that last year. I do think that JAD offers something in that regard from the standpoint of showing one coverage and playing another. Some instances of him in what would be referred to as off coverage, given a lot of space in the preseason. I have 2, but there were about 3 more. Nonetheless, I thought he performed well in the preseason. Are you comfortable with him as our 4th corner behind Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, and Nate Wiggins, what I think is an extremely talented trio? But you can never have enough good corners. Multiple people associated with the Ravens have said that. His Alabama connection obviously made him very enticing for us to take in the 4th round in 2022. So far, we haven't gotten much contribution. Let's get to the film. Like I said, we got about 10 or 12 plays queued up. This is his most physical play. I would not say he's a run-stopping corner. JAD is down here at the bottom side of the screen. And you've certainly got a zone coverage by the Ravens. And I think he does a nice job of, first of all, tempoing the quarterback. He's got eyes in the backfield, obviously. And then staying on top of the flat route here. But this is just experience. You don't need to be really connected to this route because that can often open up space behind you for a secondary route. Now, Trenton Simpson is also in that window, don't get me wrong, and Tavius Robinson, who slow played it, is trying to get to the quarterback before he can release it. But the point is JAD is staying on top of that route. And this is another reason why I don't like some of the metrics that talk about yards of separation created. Now, this happens to be a tight end on a play action concept. So we can hope in good faith that those rating services that do so aren't saying, hey, JAD is allowing a lot of space here. Well, he should. He's trying to stay in between these 2 routes here. It's called a high-low. At some point, you want to be connected to a route. But at a particular moment, or for a while, when I say tempo, that's what I'm referring to, is you want to stay on top of the flat route, the low route, such that you can still defend or be in the window of the high route. Trenton Simpson, Tavius Robinson involved in it as well. And then, of course, he finishes off with a big hit. I would say it's the most physical play I've seen of him in the preseason. I would not classify him as a run-stopping corner. More of a coverage guy. This is a 3rd and 11 against the Falcons, week 2. I believe this is Chris Blair down at the bottom of the screen that he's guarding. And that's a talented receiver. He had a nice preseason for them. It's going to end up being deeper in cut, dig, whatever you want to call it. JAD staying outside leverage. And I think he does a really nice job in this preseason of seeing the route and also seeing the quarterback in his field of vision. I think he does an exceptional job of that. And in one case here in a moment, I think it actually entices him to gear down because the quarterback isn't looking in his direction and he's actually not playing the route. But this is an example of him getting a pass defense. I don't know I think he had 2 in the preseason. Perhaps, his ball skills, we haven't seen evidence of that so far. This is the same play, end zone angle, by the way, so you'll just get an idea of how he was able to close down. We also are zone dropping out Malik Harrison, and that's David Ojabo off screen after a mug look, which we did a lot of in 2023 with Mike McDonald, and 2022 as well. 3rd and 7, he's down here to the bottom side of the screen. Same game against the Falcons. Same matchup, in fact. Him against Chris Blair. And this is the incompletion, pass defense, near interception, whatever you want to call it, by Trenton Simpson, who's providing us some versatility in these cover 2 man situations. So we've got 2 high safeties, and we're locking up man across the board. So in reality, I think JAD's route, the route that he's defending to Chris Blair, is just a clear out route. I think they're trying to get this tight end isolated on this little sail route, deep out, whatever you want to call it. JAD has the speed to keep up with vertical concepts, and we've seen evidence of it during the preseason. Again, some of it is just clear out stuff. So a lot to say about this one. This is JAD at the bottom, and this is Nate Wiggins up at the top. Wiggins is the targeted receiver, or targeted corner, against Johnny Wilson. JAD is down here at the bottom. I think that's John Ross, the former first-round pick he was matched up with multiple times. At a certain point, you can look at this and you can say, all right, he's not as connected to the receiver as Wiggins is, but that I would say that's, being kind of picky to a certain extent. You have a totally different side of the formation up to the top part of the field. This definitely is man-free, so I would be okay if someone said, hey, Coach, I would like to see him a little bit more connected to that receiver, especially because this is the X receiver. He's on line. Johnny Wilson is off the line. He's the Z because you have a tight end to that side, so he has to be back off the line. Otherwise, he'd be closing that tight end off. So I understand if someone has that complaint. I think he's in good relationship here for this being a 1st and 15. I think he's got really good feet. I do have the thought or wonder if he is someone who is occasionally worried about getting beat deep. And I can't prove that or quantify it to you at all. But there does seem to be, I think he could trust his speed a little more in the preseason and a couple of these reps to find out what he's got. Now, that was John Ross, who, of course, I think ran a 4.28 or something like that years ago at the Combine, so I understand it. Generally plays on the right-hand side of the defense. This is him against the Packers last week. Very early on in the game, we were fortunate to get, I think, a drop. Oh, no, this is not the drop. My apologies. Yes, it is. Tavius Robinson, again, is the defensive end who's challenging the quarterback on the throw. It's before they pulled Sean Clifford after like a 1-for-7 start as it relates to JAD, just blanketing this concept. But again, I would call that a clear-out route. As an aside, we kind of struggled with play-action boot stuff in the preseason. I think I covered it often, and here Trenton Simpson is really overflowing. It's the backside inside linebacker's job to help get underneath of the over concept when you have a high-low, an over-under, if you want to call it. These 2 routes are probably, stacked on top of each other too much, but this is Simpson, and this is Harrison. Harrison was the front side guy in terms of the flow. So when we say front side guy, we're talking about where the flow is, where they're making it look like a run play. So it's obviously to the top side of the screen for us. This is Harrison, and he's actually going to redirect. Now, he's not underneath the route either, but my point is, at least in the way that I understand it, the way that I taught it, the way I was exposed to from a defensive standpoint, the backside inside linebacker is a guy that's got to slow play it a little bit more and then help get underneath of and deal with some of those routes, and we're not connected or even in the picture at all. Cowboy call to trips against the Packers. So we've got JAD, Wiggins, and then the nickel Pepe all on the same side. This is a 3rd and 6. I think he's a driver. So what I mean by that is when he's in off coverage and it's man like this, he's looking for the break. He knows the sticks, and he's going to drive on the routes from depth. Now, is he too far away for you? I'm fine if you have that evaluation. Pepe is giving up the completion. I think it's an 8 or 9 yard gain to Pratt, or from Pratt to Heath, who, first of all, looked like a pretty good receiver, and Pratt, I thought, threw the ball really well. Granted, in this case, there's a lot of space there between Pepe and the receiver, and there's a little bit less space between JAD and the receiver. It's a 3rd and 6, so he's playing the out. He's trying to allow the quarterback to make the throw and either tackle him 1 yard short or 2 yards short, or get a pass defensed. And you'll see JAD actually is taking a peek here for a moment while he's breaking on the ball before he realizes his receiver's not the one being targeted. Pass up to the top side of the field. I think this is a really nice job in a 3 deep, 3 under of JAD matching and then also communicating routes. So you've got tight end here to the downside is releasing out, and then Malik Harrison is matching that first to the flats. It's a 3 deep, 3 under. Drag by what was number 1, but the new number 2, Johnny Wilson, and that's going underneath. That's going away from JAD's, quote, zone of responsibility. It's not a pure zone necessarily when it's a 3 deep, 3 under. And so he's got no work. Harrison's handling the tight end out here in the flats. The drag disappeared, left him, whatever you want to call it. And he's calling that out for Trenton Simpson to take over. And then he's looking for work from the far side of the field, which will be the middle hook. I think it's Covey, the guy who originally went in motion from the top side of the field. Now, JAD doesn't get to him. In fact, it's a completion to Ross up to the top side against Nate Wiggins. JAD doesn't get to Covey in the middle of the field. So, perhaps there's another layer or another step to this that we want him to play this really, really well. But from a 3 deep, 3 under perspective, what you're talking about is those 3 guys 3 deep, but there is no route threatening Wiggins deep, so defend the route. Same thing for JAD here. He's allowed Malik Harrison to match the flat route by the tight end. He's called out or pushed the drag to Simpson, and now he's looking for work in the middle of the field. Once you've played in Alabama's cover 7 system, I suspect that matching routes is something that's just second nature to you. I think that is probably one of the reasons why he was drafted, because Mike McDonald was going to play a lot of those coverages, and he did with the Baltimore Ravens. Does JAD get on the field for us in 2024? Well, not if Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens are healthy, obviously. Okay, a couple of plays here where I think he's given up too much space and or I would not call him ultra competitive. I'm not saying he's not a competitor, but I would not call him ultra competitive. You'd have an in cut here by Heath once again early on. It's empty, and watch the quarterback initially look to this side. And JAD, to me, can see that. He's seeing I think he's got really good eyes in terms of seeing the route and seeing the quarterback. You watch his helmet and tell me what you think he sees. He's tempoing the route, which is evidence B or C, that he sees the route. He's outside leverage, evidence as well. He also sees the quarterback, and here he doesn't explode out of here to match this underneath route, and the quarterback is, in fact, at this time, looking at him. I feel like he's actually gearing down for almost 2 steps, and that will be the part I feel like this is a missed opportunity. The ball happens to be thrown on the back shoulder of Heath, so it makes it even more of a missed opportunity, perhaps. And maybe it sounds like I'm being harsh, but my point is, I feel like if you don't gear down from like here to here, with something like that in that area, if you don't gear down there, you may be in position to get a pass defense or maybe even an interception on a ball that's thrown significantly worse. Snag flat combination down here at the bottom side. Here's JAD's on the right-hand side again. You're going to get motion across, so Worley spins down to match that. And this is just too much space for me. In my opinion, this is too much space to allow on such a short concept. It is a 2nd and 7, so I understand if we're willing to concede a 5-yard gain, but this goes for 11. So when I said earlier, I mentioned earlier, he's obviously involved in the tackle. When I said earlier that there's some times where he's worried about getting beat deep, maybe I need to find a better way to phrase it. My point is, I feel like there's some times where we've got way too much space, especially on shorter concepts, especially against someone who, to my knowledge, didn't threaten with deeper routes, a go route, a 9 route, a post, or a corner at all during the game. I would have liked to have seen us force them to do that, number one. Number two, this is classic at this point in time in the NFL. Back on one side, in this case to the boundary, X receiver, another wide receiver motioning into the flats. Now, it could be a tight end as well, but this is classic formula. And what I mean is this is what we get. Snag, flat, running back, cross in the quarterback's face. Am I saying that every time that happens, it is snag flat? No, I'm actually saying the inverse. Almost every time it's snag flat from this formation, That's the receive. That's the motion that's happening. It's a receiver motioning to the X into the boundary where the running back is. I feel like there's some clues here. Now, there's a lot of clues during the course of an NFL game, pre-snap alignment, formation, if you will. I think there's more than enough evidence here for JAD to see this and be more connected to the route. Does he need to be right on 18's hip? No, but certainly not 6-7 yards away, at least in my opinion. Third and 17, which I think is a far more appropriate situation to be pushed off by this vertical release from Ross. He's up at the top side of the screen. Again, he is generally the right side corner. So for me, he would be the backup for Brandon Stephens if Brandon Stephens were to go down. But having Nate Wiggins as that third corner available with Humphrey and Stephens obviously means Wiggins would be the first guy in, and Marlon can play on either side. So it's third and 17, like I said. I believe this is third possession, but I may be wrong for the Eagles. So more connected. Also, down here to the bottom side, similar route for Johnny Wilson against Wiggins. You can see that Wiggins is slightly closer. We want to just talk about yards of separation created. Ross's vertical stem does kind of threaten JAD for a moment. Additional to that, you had this slot wide receiver from the other side potentially threatening a vertical to hold this safety. So JAD just can't jump anything that's short, meaning he can't be right on top of Ross hip to hip on a third and 17 and possibly get beat deep because the safety to his side potentially has to match a vertical by three originating from the other side of the field. I'll pull it back just so you can know what I mean. Maybe if I didn't explain it well. You got trips over here. Yes, the tight end is number 3, but 2 is close. 2 is compressed. So 2 could still run a vertical, what I call a climb concept, like that to threaten or pull this safety out of there such that JAD maybe doesn't get help on a deeper route on a third and 17. I mean, outside the bottom of the numbers to the top part of the screen. So in this case, third and 17, of course we'll give up a 10 or 11-yard reception to John Ross, who has lights out speed to get vertical down the field. Another cowboy call. This is JAD against Ross as well, down to the bottom side of the screen. I feel like it's a little bit of an unusual route by Ross. It's a stutter and then a go and then a really slow winding break in. I feel like JAD's feet are better than this in terms of matching and being there. Nonetheless, from Kenny Pickett, it is still a somewhat contested throw, but I feel like the transition 90-degree in cut by Ross, we should be a little bit more connected to that as JAD. It's a first and 10, so it's man. I understand he doesn't want to give up a deeper completion. Certainly not a touchdown because he's trying to make the team. He's trying to make an impression, so I understand it. I think he's had a spectacular preseason for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's been healthy, and we've been able to see him and evaluate him. The coaches have been able to get plays on film against commensurate talent and then evaluate it for him so that he knows what he needs to improve on, whatever that is. There's certainly more plays that I could have shown you. I didn't think we needed to look at 30 plays from him in the preseason. I'm just glad they're there. He's 24 years old, 6'1", 200 pounds, played in Alabama's system. I think he was only a full-time starter for 1 year, so we're not talking about a guy who was a 3 or 4 year starter, if memory serves. But nonetheless has experience in a high-level system. I think that's related to the point why reason. I think that's one of the reasons why we drafted him, because of the system they run there. Excuse me. I mean, but the obvious connection with Ozzie Newsome as well, with that coaching staff there, and Nick Saban being able to communicate directly and let him know what type of player, what type of person he is. I'm glad to see him healthy. I'm glad to see him as an option. I feel like I have to say I'm glad he's our 4th option at outside corner. At this point, I would be concerned about giving up a number of shorter or intermediate completions if he's going to be required to play so far off and be so disconnected at times. And perhaps that's a harsh judgment. Feel free to let me know in the comment section, what you think of that, what you think of the film that I chose to illustrate how well he's played in the preseason. I think it's been quite well. When I say spectacular, he hasn't had any interceptions. I haven't seen a tackle for loss, a less physical corner certainly than other guys that are on our roster. But he's at this point seems to be slotted as the backup for Brandon Stephens. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this content, this film study look at Jalyn Armour-Davis, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.